while you're thinking of your question, this is
So for 16 years I had cystic fibrosis and I was fine. It was when I went travelling in about 2011.
Where was that?
Oh, in Europe.
Europe,
I was
okay.
fell sick in Italy. I became quite unwell and nothing was improving, so I
Rachel hadn't seen
put myself on the list, or got worked up to be put on the list.
How did you feel about that, going through that?
The whole process was really scary because I never thought I'd actually need a transplant. It was always something we could talk about but not actually
Something
a reality.
that was in the distant future.
Yeah.
That
So when it
upon
came,
quickly,
when it came about and we were having a serious discussion about it, it was quite shocking and scary to talk about what I'd have to go through.
Did you know anybody else who'd had a transplant?
No, never met anyone or even really heard about someone I know have a transplant, so it was quite out of the blue.
But you know, it's interesting because if you take 10 people in a room, at least one of those people will have had a transplant or know somebody who's had a transplant or been involved in the organ donation process. It's actually much more common than we generally realise.
Yeah, I think maybe in the wider community, but people I knew, they didn't know anything about it or know people could have a double lung transplant and in 3 months be back to near normal, living life again. They were quite shocked.
Because of course that's what happened to you, and very quickly you went back to university. Tell us what you did at university.
So I was out of ICU and the ward in a week and I was home learning to walk and run again.
Yep.
And within about a month, I was up living life, going back to uni, taking it slow. But
and doing exams at university.
Doing exams.
So how do you spend your time, you know, when you're not at university?
Walking my dog, seeing friends, going for a run. I'm really into exercise, so that's something fun to do that I couldn't do before.
None of this could happen without the wonderful machines that we have to enable perfusion, our heart-lung machine, our ECG monitoring machines, and in essence,
was really
they're really our
you know that,
lifeline
don't you?
that allow us to do what we do. Without that equipment, we couldn't do it. So you're here because you were able to benefit from that machinery. And all the people running the machines, of course. I mean, but good people need good machines. And that's our lifeline. That's why you're here, why other people that we are able to transplant are here to enjoy life.
This isn't my presentation. So yeah, as Alan mentioned, he's now my doctor at St Vincent's, which is great. So I'm here to talk about more what he said and put it in a more personal story, how I came to have a lung transplant and stuff. And I think the things he mentioned, which are really important, is referral, timing of referral to the lung transplant clinic and also timing to be put on the list. They're two things that I think I kind of maybe slipped through the cracks a bit with the referral and being educated about it earlier before my transplant. So yeah, like in the video, I went travelling in halfway through 2012 to Europe with my girlfriends. I fell sick over there. My lung function dropped from about 50% maybe to 30 within like 2 weeks. I was really unwell. I went to hospital. When I was eventually okay to come home, I was in RPA over and over again. And that's when my doctor said, hey, let's have this discussion about transplant. And I was really shocked. Never heard any of my friends with CF or anyone have a transplant. I was really like, I've always been healthy. This is my life. I never thought I would actually need this dramatic, drastic action taken to save my life. So I was referred to St Vincent's and did all my workup tests. There were a lot. Some I could do as an inpatient at RPA. Some I had to go into St Vincent's to do whatever. My mum was with me a lot, so she drove me to all my tests, got everything done. And so the last thing to do in the process was to speak to the surgeon. And I did that on a Friday afternoon, I think, at St Vincent's. And it was the final step in deciding to go on the list. And I think I spoke to Alan just previously, and he said, is this what you want? Is this what you want? Do you want to have a transplant? It's comes with a whole new set of difficulties and medications, as he said before, is this something you would like? And I was sitting there like, wow, it's happening. Is this something that I'm going to enter into. And I, obviously decided, yes, this is what I need. It's a serious decision, but yeah. So I spoke to the surgeon, and that night or whatever, I was listed officially on the active waiting list. So 2 nights later, I got a call at 2 a.m. in the morning saying, "Hi, can you please come into St Vincent's?" And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've heard stories of people waiting 8 months, a year, 2 years, like never thought I'd get the call straight away. Immediately I thought, am I ready? I was just listed, is this, wow, okay. So we packed up and went into St Vincent's, and I had a uni assignment due that morning. It was a Monday morning. So I was more worried at that stage about getting this bloody assignment submitted to uni. I was trying to explain to them that I wasn't going to be handing it in paper, I was going to do it online. And so waiting in hospital, and as Alan said, you don't always get the operation. There might be a problem with matching or something. So I was thinking, it's not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. What are the chances? Anyway, 8 hours later, 10 hours later, whatever, I was transplanted, woke up in ICU thinking, wow, like tubes in your mouth, you wake up and you're thinking like, did I really just get new lungs? So, they explained to me, the lovely nurses, yes, you are in ICU, your mum will be here soon, all that stuff. And they took all the tubes out, and I don't know how long I was waiting there, but eventually they said, you want to try standing up? And I'm not sure if this is a couple hours or 12 hours, I was a bit not sure with time. But eventually, they helped me stand up and took a deep breath with my new lungs, and it was amazing. I had never felt that, like, freedom, being able to expand your lungs, breathing deep. Oh, I'm getting emotional. Yeah, that was amazing when I first stood up there. Anyway, so after that, it was fine. I moved to the ward, had 7 nights in the ward with doctors coming to see me, physios, family, whatever. And every day got easier to breathe, to expand my lungs. Obviously, there's a bit of pain with my scars, but other than that, the feeling was amazing. You couldn't explain to people how you go from, having a 30%, or before I got transplanted, actually, my lung function was about 9%, 9 to 12%. So it was pretty shocking. I was on oxygen, BiPAP at night, but still going to uni eventually. I'd still somehow managed to sit in a lecture. So I was still going to uni, but it was a difficult. Life was a challenge. It was hard. Physio, breathing, life was hard. So when I got this new lung, I'm sitting in hospital, and you're thinking, wow, like the things I can do. If after 7 days, after a big operation, I'm feeling like this, imagine what it would be like another week, another month, another year. It's incredible, right? So I went home about 7 days after the operation, 7 to 8 days. Obviously still being careful, just had a major operation, but, at home, I could now shower myself. Showering was really hard before. I could, sleep without any tubes. I could just touch my face at night and not have a machine there. Things like that were the big change. So obviously the new thing to get used to now was a different set of challenges. It was, instead of physio and always checking my, not checking, but going to hospital and, being told that your lung function's now even worse than it was a week ago, and, having to worry about that. It was now the new start in my life, which was worrying about a whole new set of medications, balancing those medications, going to hospital to see the team, twice a week, which is what I had to do for a long time, which was fine. You accept that with what's happened. So I've luckily not had any major complications since my transplant. I haven't been back in a hospital, fingers crossed, in 2.5 years. So that's amazing for me, because spending 2 weeks at a time in RPA previously was not fun at all, as some of you may know. So so now I'm 2.5 years post-transplant, no complications, like I've said. I still go to hospital to see the team and check on things every 6 to 8 weeks. I don't mind going, it's not a hassle. I get to see Alan and have a chat, so as often as possible, really, and stuff like that. And so my FEV1 now is 80, 90%, 90%, I think 92 was last time I checked. I don't focus so much on the exact number. I feel really good, and everyone else is happy with it, so I'm happy. I'm back at uni, I'm at uni still, and everything's going really well. So any questions, I guess, is now what time for. If anyone has any personal experiences, or Yeah, so no, I haven't had any infections or that kind of thing like I used to. I was always on nebulizers and, doing physio to get rid of those infections that just wouldn't go away. Now, no, nothing. So I never touched a nebulizer. I don't do physio. One thing I did had to learn after the transplant was to cough again, to use your lungs to make yourself cough if there was something in your lungs, but no mucus or stuff like that. It's amazing. Normal lungs, sorry.
I'll just add that Rachel has a very high level of personal fitness. She exercises, she runs, she rides, she abseils, she does all sorts of things. Doesn't jump out of aeroplanes yet, but and that's very important because mucociliary clearance after a transplant is a little bit reduced because the cilia beat at slightly lower sort of rates. And it is true that people who do best are the people who don't have lung infections. Sinuses are a potential source of, postnasal drip and soiling of the lungs. The active people, the people who work hard and who have a good regime of daily exercise, generally have a much better sort of lung outcome. And, so you don't have to do physiotherapy, but the activity is a de facto physiotherapy.
And one other thing is that with the transplant, obviously being immune suppressed, you do get colds and stuff like that really easily. So that's just one thing. If you do get a cold, you might have to go on antibiotics or something and work at clearing your chest, but it's not anything like it was previously with physio. Yeah. In the beginning...
Sorry, just the question, just repeat that for everyone. So in terms of the new drugs that you're on post-transplant, the question is about how does that affect you and some personal insights about that.
Yeah, in the beginning, obviously, I was on a medication you took, I think, 3 times a day. And that was hard, but again, you managed it, you separate them, and it was fine. Now I'm on ones you take twice a day. So I have a morning set, a night set, and that's fine. I guess you learn pretty easily. You just set an alarm on your phone and you take your morning medications then and there. It's just something you live with, I guess. I'm used to it now. If I go to a sleepover, I take my medications packed and take them at the same time. You can do it. And I've been travelling to Europe again with all my medications. I took like half my suitcase was medications. But you can work it out.
Rachel has travelled overseas since a transplant. Do you want to tell them about that, Rachel?
Yeah, I've been to Europe twice. I think that's all. But the time difference... no, that's all.
She's just been to Europe twice.
I went to Perth as well. But the time difference wasn't too bad there. But you take a letter saying that's why I have all these drugs with me that Alan wrote. And you can do it. It's not hard. You take a pack with your daily medications out with you for the day, maybe some extras just in case, you don't want to skip these medications, they're important. But, it doesn't rule your life. You kind of work around it and you have to make it work, yeah. I think so. I definitely think so. Because CF was nebulizers for me, and they're not portable to a sleepover with a friend. And BiPAP, I was stuck at home with CF. Now I have the freedom, I just carry my pills in my bag, and, my friends will even remind me. They go, have you taken your morning medications? I'm like, yes, I have. Thank you. But
She has good friends, obviously.
We have the lovely Kaz. I told you this was going to be the best session. Look, here we go, another inspirational lady.
Thanks, hon. This question is to Alan. Alan, what is the longest living lung transplant recipient with CF on your team?
About 25 years. Yeah. Look, longevity is one criterion by which you look at success. Quality of life is probably a more important one, but it tends to also track that the people who live a long time have a better quality of life. And people used to say to me, oh look, I'll be happy if I get 3 years or 5 years, and I would always say to them, do not count your days. Nobody knows whether you'll outlive me. Most of them say, I hope I do. But importantly, one of our CF patients rocked up the other day with a very large parcel under his arm. He gave me a bust of me that he'd done for his 20th anniversary. Kath, I know you sort of took 20 of your friends to Bali or something ridiculous, but you know, but that was just following your standard operating procedures. But these are people who are living well, and you know, people, you know, run companies and have children if that's their want, or not, as a case may be, and have a good quality of life. And so I don't think there's any limitation on good lungs. I mean, lungs, as they get older, get a bit of emphysema, but most of the lungs that we transplant are from very young people. So I wouldn't be suspecting that that's going to be a major problem. We've seen it in one of our CF patients who we transplanted originally in about 1995 or so, who we retransplanted and had emphysema, but he's been fine ever since. So, look, lungs don't last forever, but nor does any other organ of your body. But you have to look after them, and our patients do.
Got another question. She is a New Zealander, so we won't mention the war. So I'll hand you over.
I must be the only person in the room who didn't know that we won the Bledisloe Cup. Anyway, we've got the netball this afternoon. We won't go there. Rachel, if it's okay for you to share your thoughts, could you just and it's perfectly okay if you don't want to, but I'd just be interested in hearing about the psychological impact of, you know, the fact that obviously the lungs came from someone, and you know, so I'm just really interested in hearing how.
So obviously that's a massive thought after your transplant, well, not immediately after, but, you know, in the days after, you're thinking, you know, someone has passed away, and, you know, luckily, you know, their family were kind enough to make this big decision to donate their lungs. You know, that's obviously a huge decision at a painful time in their life. Yes, it hasn't affected me in a way that I've gotten upset or, you know, sad about it, but in a way that I'm thankful and, you know, very grateful for these people. And the way I can repay that is by doing things like this, you know, sharing, donate life and those kind of organisations, making it more awareness in the community for, you know, if someone passes away, this is an option you have to save someone's life. It hasn't affected me too extremely, but something I'm very, very aware of and thankful for, obviously.
I've got a question. Now, it would... sorry.
I think this is an incredibly important question, and it's something that we've tried as a national community and a global community to make a normal part of our work day in hospitals, to think about organ donation as a normal part of end-of-life care, and to also promulgate that into communities so that communities develop a sense of maturity in their ability to conceptualise death, end-of-life care, and in times when this happens, you know, to young people in tragic circumstances, to see the benefits that will accrue to the Australian population from considering positively organ donation, because there are so many people who benefit from that. At the same time, once those new organs are part of you, once those lungs are part of Rachel, it's populated by her own cells. They are now a composite. There are still some donor structures there, but a lot of the cells are part of her. They become a very wonderful melange of her own DNA, her own cells, and the donor cells. And when you think about it like that, it's an assistance. It's an aid to quality of life.
One of the things I think everyone in the room will appreciate today is that the relationship that the two of you have is so wonderful and that is very palpable. How important is it to have that relationship with your surgeon, with your CF teams, and did you experience a change in shifting from essentially a CF team of specialists and multidisciplinary people to a new team?
Yeah, so St Vincent's is really like centralised care. So now they take care of every aspect of my lung transplant problems, but also just general issues. So my whole care now is taken over by St Vincent's and the team. Obviously, I'm very thankful to have such an amazing team. They work so efficiently and so methodically. They know everything about you. That's CF sometimes at the old clinic. Not to diss anyone, but sometimes I didn't feel like they knew my whole background or story, essentially, because I moved from a kids to adult clinic. They didn't know my whole background and understand my care. They'd ask what medications I was on, having no idea, and quickly jot it down, and then change it. And I think, having St Vincent's, having a really close relationship, if something goes wrong, I can just text Alan and say, hi, I'm feeling very unwell, I've got a cough, I've got a runny nose. And he will say, of course, go to the clinic, get a swab, check everything, but also maybe just start this antibiotic, or just, reassure you about it. It makes you feel safe, which is amazing, because obviously this can go wrong easily. It's not a place that I don't like going to. I like going to St Vincent's Lung Clinic. It's a very nice place to be, and it's a nice big room.
Another question.
Hi,
Just before you ask the question, it's a privilege. It's a privilege.
It's just in regards to not doing physio, now that you've got the new lungs in there. But at the same time, Ellen, you said that her new lungs were being populated by her own cells and own DNA. So can you just give a really simple explanation as to why she doesn't have to do physio in the future?
Okay, because the cells that are populated by her own DNA are not the epithelial cells. And it's the epithelial cells where the CFTR regulated gene causes the problems with the channels which lead to the thick mucus. And that doesn't happen. And one of the studies that we did, actually when I was in Brompton Hospital in 1985, where we took patients with cystic fibrosis and did probes to determine the transmembrane epithelial sort of connectivity. And I actually did this myself. They put things in your nose and then under your skin to look at differences in the number of millivolts that would occur between the two. And then we did that subsequently with patients with cystic fibrosis and showed it was abnormal. We subsequently did similar things some years later with CF patients that showed that below the join, right, the epithelial difference is a normal person's epithelial difference. So those epithelial cells remain non-self. The other way to show that is if you take tiny biopsies, let's say that we had, but we didn't, transplant Rachel with a male donor, and those cells maintain that male chromosome, the Y chromosome. And we've done that in other people. So we know that the epithelial cells retain the characteristics of the donor. Other cells, immune effector cells and things like that, will be her own cells, and particular sort of cells will have her own genome, which is one of the reasons why we tend to see more acute rejection in the early period post-transplant, because by 12 weeks post-transplant, a lot of the cells which were non-self have been changed. Not to say you can't have late rejection, you certainly can, but it's just not at the higher risk.
Lucky last from me. Mum. There's a lot of parents in the room, and obviously this is such a personal and confronting decision. And it's okay if you don't want to question, but I'd really love to hear from a mum's perspective that whole process of going on the list and what does that mean?
Well, with Rachel, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Okay. With Rachel, it was such a sudden progression with her lung function decreasing that I think it hit us all as a bit of a shock. So when they first mentioned it at RPA that she potentially should be looking at transplant, it was really something we hadn't considered. She had always been so well. She was like the golden child of Westmead, never in hospital until she was 16, and then all of a sudden plummeted. So it was a real shock to go through this transplant workup. It did take a while. I think it was 6 months of going for various tests. We sort of were wondering why we can't get them all done in a couple of weeks, why it had to sort of be spread out for so long. So it was quite traumatic going through that because we weren't really sure, did she need one, will she improve? I mean, maybe another 2 weeks in RPA on different antibiotics and maybe she'd get better and wouldn't need this transplant. It didn't go that way. She didn't improve. So I guess as she was getting sicker and sicker, she was staying home more. I had to cut my hours back at work. I would spend a couple of hours in the morning doing physio, a couple of hours in the afternoon. It was very scary at times. I didn't think she was ever actually going to make it for transplant. She was so unwell. When she finally finished all the tests and she did see the surgeon on that Friday, we'd only just bought a dog for her because I thought she was going to be staying at home all the time and getting so unwell she'd need company. So I bought this little puppy. She saw the surgeon 2 weeks later and got listed. And that Monday morning she was called in to have the transplant. It was such a roller coaster. It was so quick that we didn't really have time to think about it. We got to the hospital and I was thinking, is this really going to go ahead? Are we going to be one of the unlucky people that are going to get to theatre? They'll put her in ICU, wake her up and say, sorry, the lungs weren't any good, or sorry, we couldn't transplant you. And then you'd go home again to what you were before, maybe even worse because you'd already been through an anaesthetic. So, but we had to be positive. We had to be really positive, and Rachel's a really positive person and we've got a fabulous relationship. Probably because we've always spent so much time together because of CF. And I think we were just strong for each other to get through it. I remember her saying when she got to ICU after the transplant, I spent all day at St Vincent's. I'd been there since early morning. Once she went to theatre, I stayed there. I couldn't leave. I went and sat in the gardens around Darlinghurst, coffee. A few friends came in and sat with me. I didn't get to see her till late that night. She actually still didn't know if she'd had the transplant. She's waking up in ICU and she actually didn't know whether she had new lungs or not. And I remember her saying to me, I tried to ask them, but I didn't know. I couldn't talk. And she's blinking at them and all she wanted someone to say was, yeah, you got new lungs. And she didn't know for hours. So that was pretty amazing. It is a really wonderful thing to see your child be able to breathe again. It's just it was so hard to watch her be so sick at home. I had good lungs, I could breathe. She couldn't. She was so sick with the physio that she would be literally vomiting trying to do physio as well. So I'm so grateful that we have a terrific transplant team in Australia. I'm so grateful to the family that made that decision to donate the organs, and my daughter being so lucky to receive them. And not a day goes by that I'm not thankful. I'm very, very thankful. And I feel about the family and I think about what it must have been for them to lose their loved one. And I just hope that they know that young people like Rachel are going forth with a fabulous life because of the gift that they made. Yeah. And the dog, the puppy, yes, was 2 weeks old. Rachel's in hospital for a couple of weeks. I became main carer for the dog. Rachel has now moved out and lives by herself, and I have the dog. So the dog is now 2.5 years old. Thank you, Rachel. Did anyone want to ask me anything? Thanks.
Do you think maybe transplant should have been discussed a lot earlier? Maybe when she was in the kids' hospital, or so that it's not a surprise?
I don't think I would have listened to them if they'd mentioned it to me. I would have said, you've got to be kidding, not my daughter. She looks so good. We're not going to have a transplant ever. Rachel is going to be 60, 65 with CF and hardly been in hospital. That's how I saw her future. I was not going to give in. I was not going to say yes that she would get that unwell because she never had been. I don't think I would have listened, right? I was a good one for burying my head in the sand sometimes as well and not having to face things till they arrived. I didn't want to know that it could get so bad. Maybe when she was at RPA it was a hard time because she was transitioning from kids to adults, and that was a really rocky year. It was a year she became really unwell, and when Rachel said they didn't really know me, it was the different doctors when you go to the clinic, and I mean, fair to them, they didn't know her. And you know, a couple more years at RPA and they would have got to know her better and it wouldn't have been so bad. I think they brought the transplant up probably at the right time. She was going downhill so quickly, it was a difficult thing for them to do as well.
Thanks, everyone. I think you'll agree. I did promise this was going to be the best session of the conference. I think we haven't disappointed. I'm completely in awe of Rachel and what a fabulous, your absolute testament to living a great and wonderful life post-transplant. And thank you so much for sharing a very personal story. And my new best friend, Alan.
He's my best friend.
Yeah, he's my best friend, no. Obviously, you know, we are so blessed to have such talented people work with our community. Look, you know, if you ever move to Queensland, I'll adopt you, both of you. And thank you, Mum, and thank you very much for your questions and your participation.